All right.
Well, hello, everybody. Tonight we've got Andrew showing us the his man-in-the-middle techniques for fun and profit. You go by Andrew, right?
Yep, it's me.
Okay. You don't go by Andy then.
Nah, it's too short.
It's too short. So, welcome everybody. Glad you can make it, and I will stop sharing so that you can go ahead and take over.
Cool.
Thanks for coming tonight. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, I'll share my screen here, or at least my Chrome tab, and we'll maybe move on to the screen in a minute.
And for the record, you're using a Steam Deck.
Yeah, which is running Arch.
Really? Of course.
I'm not hipster enough to be running Arch on my own, but Steam makes it, Valve makes it pretty easy to, and they smoothed out all the corners, so you don't have to compile everything by hand.
Oh, that's cool.
So
It's KDE based, isn't it, too?
yeah, it's Plasma, so and that helps a lot.
Oh, so this is, you didn't install on top of Steam. This is the Steam OS.
Yeah, you can basically they run the Steam client in like big picture mode most of the time. When you turn on this like console, it goes in like big picture mode kind of, but it's a better, they polished it up.
Oh.
And then if you want, you can bail out and drop down to Linux desktop, but it's not running Plasma until then.
Oh.
Just starts a user session.
See here, I thought you reinstalled something on your Steam Deck.
No, this is like I mean, I've installed a lot of software on it.
Yeah,
so it's like a
but
Linux
it's a
desktop, but I haven't made like big kernel modifications or anything like that.
That's cool.
Custom component kernel.
Yeah, and even if you did, they've got kind of like an A/B like upgrade thing where it'll wipe out all your changes if it's not in like the user folder or in your home folder.
Oh, cool.
For kind of good reasons, because they want to be able to like keep on the like bleeding edge of Proton and stuff like that. But yeah, it's nice to have a little Linux box in your pocket.
I didn't mean to sidetrack. I just thought it was kind of cool. I hadn't actually seen Steam Deck yet, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
So this talk was just kind of based off like an offhand comment a few meetings ago. I think someone was asking like what actually happens when a captive portal puts up their iConsent page. And I think I said, oh, it's pretty much a man-in-the-middle attack. And so he said, oh, we could do a quick explanation of some of what's going on behind the scene. And I guess what they are and how they can be used. So today I was going to introduce myself, talk about what a man-in-the-middle attack is, which I think is, you can talk about the vernacular and disagree a little bit because it's not like a legal term. But I'll at least give you my take. Historically, how some of these attacks have happened, what's happening when a Wi-Fi portal, captive portal pops up, and then why a lot of the attacks have decreased of this variety in recent years, and then why you still might want to do it to yourself. So my name's Andrew. I work at BMW as a software engineer and cloud architect. And I've worked a lot of jobs before that. I've been an IT guy, been a run to construction general managers. Oh, wow. Now I'm slinging code. So that's what I do. So what's a man-in-the-middle attack? What I say is that a man-in-the-middle attack is halfway between eavesdropping and phishing. Because to me, eavesdropping is like passive listening into communications, generally without their knowledge or consent. And you're just trying to find a way to tap into the information stream that's going across. Phishing is usually more of a social engineering technique where you are impersonating, say, like a bank login screen or some other trusted entity to gain access to like a single piece of information. Man-in-the-middle attack is you're going to impersonate a legitimate piece of infrastructure in the middle of a communication stream, but you are not the thing that they think it is, and you are intercepting their communications, either reading it or making modifications and then sending on its way. So it's a semi-transparent attack in the same way that eavesdropping is, versus like a phishing attack. A lot of times, as soon as they get your, say, login credentials, they'll bail out and either just like redirect you to the legitimate website, or I don't know, you a lot of times might or might not know you've been hacked. But man in the middle, the usual goal is to stay undetected, just keep intercepting or changing that communication. So historically, you could say man in the middle attacks have gone back, like the Romans and stuff, like anytime there's been cryptography or communications appearing to be, a post office or a trusted broker in the middle, but actually unwrapping that communication, changing it or not changing it, it goes back way before computers. But what we think of as man-in-the-middle attacks came to prominence in the 80s, 84, 86, right as the internet was starting to become more widespread. And by the 90s, the internet was just exploding. People were doing shopping, banking online, 2000s, but the technology, the web technology to secure it just hadn't really caught up. So probably the most common man-in-the-middle attacks you'd see would be close to the actual user client, not as much at the server side. So things like ARP poisoning, where you're taking some like layer 2 and impersonating the either a gateway, a DHCP server, or a DNS server. You can insert yourself when someone says, "Hey, I need test.com." The man in the middle can raise their hand and say, "I am test.com." And back then there wasn't a lot of verification. You just trust the first answer, and your browser or your Netscape would immediately start pulling requests from that place. Similar with DHCP, you can appear to be the DHCP server, actually assign the IP, in maybe a different whole network segment, and then proxy all their traffic through that man-in-the-middle attacker. And another kind of famous one, I think this you could argue on whether it's on a man-in-the-middle attack. Kevin Mitnick, when he exploited the Japanese corporation whose name is escaping me, but he basically exploited a early TCP handshake that was predictable, and that you could pretend to be the trusted, second, third, the other party on the other side of the handshake, and then you could grab all the packets and then pass it on along halfway through. Nowadays, this gets a lot more difficult. When we talk about Wi-Fi captive portals here, this is basically doing that 1990s technique of, as soon as you get onto a Wi-Fi access point and ask for any website, which you may have noticed, when you get on an airplane or a coffee shop, you actually need to request the HTTP version of that website for this to work. It will immediately respond back and serve you an HTML document with that same domain name. Occasionally, if they're nice and newer, because a lot of times these are like strung together last minute software that the vendor packages with their AP. But sometimes they'll do a 301 redirect, but other times they'll just serve you and say, "I'm lwn.net," and give you their I consent page where you need to log in or say you accept their terms and conditions. And as soon as it does that, the techniques vary, but they fingerprint based on your MAC IP, maybe something else, maybe some sort of cookie. If they continue, it would be bad if they do it sometimes. They will continue to proxy your data sometimes, but usually they just inspect the headers to make sure that this is coming from someone that consented. There are now modern RFCs that's being built into new networking standards where this is no longer necessary, where there's a standard HTTP code and a way to do captive portals that is the correct way to do captive portals. And it's starting to get adoption. And so you should not do this anymore, but you see it in a whole bunch of places. You always need to do it in HTTP, because most man-in-the-middle attacks today have been mitigated by TLS. And SSL, in the early versions still has some security flaws that could allow you to crack it, and then you could still do a man-in-the-middle attack. But there's not a lot of active exploits if you're using the current versions of TLS. And the root certificates are baked into the browsers now. So it's just really hard unless you have hacked into the target server and grabbed their private, TLS key, and you can, self-sign your own domain, certificate. It's just going to be very difficult for someone to successfully pull off man-in-the-middle attack, at least on web traffic today. That's not to say that, nation state actors that have unlimited resources aren't doing it actively right now. And, I think hackers have a lot of other techniques they can do to still intercept your traffic, but a lot of times it's not actually unwrapping your TLS traffic in a route like you used to be able to do when it was sent over HTTP and basically clear text. I caveat it, it's based on what we know now, there might be some zero-day exploit right now, where they're getting into the, key exchange of public key cryptography of TLS. But as far as we know, that's not happening commonly in the wild. And so this is just not a thing you need to worry about as often. But it's still very useful, I think, for a lot of people day to day. And there are different software suites that do it. I think like Burp Suite has some stuff built in that can do this. The problem with a lot of developer tools that can do things like this, like even just packet capture, is that if it gets popular enough, it gets bought out by somebody. You see the same thing with like API testing tools, and it gets commercialized. Man-in-the-middle-proxy.org is still open source and works pretty well on Linux. There's more polished solutions on Windows and Mac. I use Proxyman on OS X pretty often when I'm trying to debug different applications. But Man-in-the-middle proxy is actually, I think it's a nice piece of software and it's open source. So this is one thing, that's what I would recommend. So let me stop sharing for a second here, and I can kind of show you how and why you might use this. And I think I'll need to stop sharing and share my whole window for 1 second here. So if you go to the mitmproxy.org, they have a few different am I not sharing? Okay, you guys can't see me now. Okay, they give you a few different binaries. The one really nice one they have here is it's actually just a little web app.
We're still not seeing that.
You're still not seeing it. Let me stop and I will retry that.
Are you sharing your screen? You sharing your tab?
No, I think. Oh, just the entire screen. There we go.
It's a demo.
How about this?
It's demo gremlins. I go to your app. Is it
I told it to share the entire screen. It's not, I think it just needs to be highlighted.
There it is.
There's someone else I think might need to highlight it.
That's just.
Oh, I do know we are viewing my screen. All right,
Yeah, that's your screen.
we're good to go. All right.
There. Yes.
So they have a version of this that'll actually run a little web page here.
Oh.
And once it's going, what's really nice is on it, when it bootstraps up, it will actually create a root certificate, like a certificate authority, that you can then install on your devices. Because, like I said, TLS has made this very hard to do unless you can get your usually operating system to trust the certificate authority that is signing these, so this can sign google.com, not because it has Google's private key, but because the operating system thinks that the root certificate that you've installed on it, is a root certificate or a certificate authority. So what's happening here right now, and I'm going to actually share my phone screen as well. So you can see there's some information coming in here, and I think there's just background from my phone. So I'll stop sharing for 1 second here, open Jitsi, and share from my phone. And I'm turning the sound down as best I can. All right. And we should be broadcasting.
All right.
All right, so this is my iPhone. If you can do the same thing on Android, but the big thing to know here is you grab the certificate authority root cert from that it was generated by man-in-the-middle proxy, and you need to install it on your phone.
Is that root cert unique to your installation?
Yeah, so
Let's make sure you didn't have like a one that anyone could start saying they're Google.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you can. It's just unless you grab that person's phone and install your certificate on it, it'll come up.
I just didn't know if there was like one root certificate that the application is generating, or it's
no. Yeah. It's unique to this installation.
Okay.
when you open up that file, you'll see iOS has a way of saying, do you trust this? Do you want to allow this? And you can turn these certificates on or off, based on, so like I probably should turn these off when I'm done with this, because it's just not good to allow, if someone got onto my Steam Deck, got that thing, they could spoof a lot of websites. So you allow that. And then the other thing is you need to look at the IP that's on your proxy of this machine. And I'm proxying 8082 right now, or port 8082. So when I go to my Wi-Fi here and I click onto it, if you scroll to the bottom, you can configure a manual proxy. And right now this is pointing at my Steam Deck. So all the traffic going through this phone now is piping through the Steam Deck first. And what I'm going to do is I can open up, as an example, this is a application that I work on at work. And so we have a JWT, once you've logged in, that's being passed around to make different calls to get information to populate the app. But you can, what's nice about this is really any app on your phone that doesn't have a nice API for you to call, you can generally sniff whatever authentication method they have. It'll usually be in 2 or 3 calls. And then if you want to put it into something like Home Assistant, or just be able to just like reverse engineer it so you can script things. Like what I've done before is like Venmo. Venmo used to have a developer API and they pulled it away. But you can sniff your own Venmo traffic. I'm not gonna bring that up right now because I don't want my live tokens for Venmo being put on here, but then you can send out like group requests of stuff for like recurring payments that you just scripted into like a bash script, Python script, anything like that. And when we go back to man in the middle proxy here in a second, you'll see it's like pretty simple to do. So let me stop sharing here. And we'll reshare my whole screen. All right, so we're back on the proxy here. If you know what the website is, you can search and it'll filter based on all the traffic it's seeing coming through. So this is a little bit like maybe like Wireshark or something, where you're going to capture, especially with modern apps nowadays, there's just so many side calls. Like in a browser, your extensions will be calling, like DoubleClick and Facebook and stuff and everything. So it's nice to know the base URL. Just gonna hop out here. And so right here, I can see like here's a call where it's asking that app was about for smart charging electric vehicles. You can see like the bear token, but what's really cool about this is you can actually replay this. Or you could copy like this URL and I could put this into another API client like Insomnia or Postman and play around with this later, start changing the like parameters that we're putting into the URL. And it also lets you actually in the web page right here, view the payload that's coming back, like the JSON payload from that call, which is super useful. Even if you like say you wanted to, again, with like Home Assistant, it's a pretty scriptable system that you need to have, kind of base of how to log in and which endpoints to call to do stuff. And you can make an endpoint, say that like shows you your state of charge. I think someone's already made an IBM integration for Home Assistant, but like you could build your own with this. Because once you figure out what kind of data is coming back from any of the apps you use that just don't have a documented API or website that you could grab it from, which is pretty helpful. And normally this would all be in TLS traffic and you just couldn't see it. But as soon as you insert a proxy that is able to emulate, staging here like api.bmwcharge4.com, now that it can emulate that, you can unwrap all that traffic and see exactly what's going on under the hood. And I would say that's mostly what I use it for, use this technique for day to day is sometimes for work, because I might not have built the app, but one of our partners might have built the app and maybe I think they did something wrong. So you can inspect the traffic that they're receiving and sending back and really truth check, that the final binary they got installed on a device is doing the correct thing. And then the other thing I use it for is just reverse engineering apps that I like to use, but don't want to have to open my phone or open the app to be able to make calls on behalf of my user profile. So, and that's mostly what I was going to show you all today. You guys have any questions about, I guess, that, the technique in general, stuff like that? Like I said, yeah, to summarize, it's basically eavesdropping with a little spin. And it used to be a big problem, but public key cryptography has really mostly fixed it for the average user. And if you're still worried, about like TLS and that it might be compromised, you can always use something like mutual TLS, MTLS, where you're actually doing a double key exchange, and that you wouldn't be able to sniff. You'd have to hack both sides of the communications. If that happened, you're screwed anyway. Right. And yeah, so it doesn't mean you're not going to get man in the middle anymore, but at least there's a lot lower chance nowadays of it happening. But you can do it yourself, and that's pretty helpful.
Does anyone remember Firesheep?
Yeah, so Firesheep, I think, was just grabbing the session cookie.
Yeah, that was a Firefox add-on that you could install and go to a coffee shop. And this is before widespread HTTPS.
Yeah.
Everything was in HTTP at the time, so Facebook was HTTP. So you could go to a coffee shop and install Firesheep, and it would show you the people logged in on Facebook at that coffee shop. And you could just click on it and hijack the session in real time, and then be that person.
Yeah.
Since everything was in HTTP, and the add-on was so easy to use, someone had pretty much automated every aspect of it. You just install it and then just click a little button. So then I think that was the last thing that all the companies were like, we're doing HTTPS from now on. And then it was like overnight, it was like everyone was doing it. So.
Let's Encrypt did a lot of, I think they did a big thing for getting everyone on HTTPS, because then it became there's never a cost really at the time, you can just put it on everything.
Oh, the one other place I should mention that this still happens a lot, that I guess people should just be aware of, is corporate proxies are still very much a thing. And if it's a company-owned device, they are certainly allowed to install their own certificate authority on there, and they usually do. And they may or may not unwrap all your traffic, TLS included. So just because you think you're, on a secure, you see the lock and you're going to facebook.com, doesn't mean that they can't see all of the traffic that you are doing if you're using a company-owned device. And I guess buyer beware in that case. So
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I got. Nobody has any questions. Move on to.
Does anyone use CertBot at all for their websites?
Yeah, that's the Let's Encrypt, right?
Yeah. It's the Linux program. I guess it's Windows too, I don't know. But on Linux, you just apt-get install CertBot.
Yeah, that's great.
It'll even do the renews for you too.
Mhm.
Like every 80 whatever days, it's just automated and stuff. Wow.
You said that was Let's Encrypt that does?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Let's Encrypt is the organization that provides the software.
And I think Let's Encrypt was sort of an outcome of Firesheep too, where they realized, hey, we need to make this network happen.
Collaboration between like Google and Microsoft,
Yep.
like a bunch
All
of
of
them. Yeah, there's a lot of-
yeah.
There's a big push to get encryption.
EFF and all
Yeah,
those.
EFF is a bunch
Yeah.
of fun. Yeah.
Also, Google will prioritize websites in their search results that have encryption over ones that don't. So there's a SEO benefit to having encryption too. There's really no reason to not have. I mean, it used to be like there was actually a performance concern of it just to have all your pages encrypted was overkill, and you just had payment pages all. But now, I mean, there's
Also,
the overhead's nothing.
Yeah, I think all the modern computer architectures have some sort of instruction set that does elliptic key cryptography or one of the other techniques for public key. So
Now, if you go to, I guess, a mainstream site through that proxy, I'm curious if it works, because I know sites like Google and some of the big sites, they actually encode into the browsers. There's a big list in the browsers of basically who issues our certificate, And if it doesn't match, they do that to get around, because you could get countries that lean on their certificate authorities to make fake certificates.
There are, Google does not. I have gone to Google through it.
Okay.
You could build it in, but if you built, the network layer should be transparent to the application layer. So in general, most, like certainly phone apps and a lot of browsers, but kind of depends, just kind of trust that the network is telling the truth when it says this is, google.com. And so you'd have to have something written in like JavaScript that somehow checks. And like I said, you can use like MTLS or something if you're doing, client to server communication. You can have certificates on both sides that need to prove the authenticity of the communication, doubly, not just from the server. But I don't think it's very common. Probably be
I thought Google was one of the companies that had basically, I guess only if you're going through your browser. I guess it'd be a feature of the browser that has it hard coded essentially what their certificate authority is. It may be that the operating system or the browser will let you do it if it's a custom root certificate installed on your thing versus some third party, certificate you're getting on the web or on the internet.
It's coming through right now. I'm on
Okay.
Google and I can see like the traffic here of it, pulling like the news stories for the cards and
That's just with a web browser?
it's with Chrome actually.
Okay, yeah.
You'd expect Chrome to be the first one to
Yeah,
block you
I was gonna
if
say.
anybody was.
So it must put an exception if the root certificate's installed on your phone.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a website, you can actually submit your own domain to be included in the browsers if you want and say, this is who issues my certificates and,
So show us what we're looking at again.
So this is the man-in-the-middle proxy still, and we're
Right.
seeing, I've just filtered for google.com, and this is all the traffic coming from my phone
On your phone, right?
to google.com.
Gotcha.
And so you can see it's got, like the secure cookie and stuff, that Google puts in there and all that. So, I think this is probably not as useful for Google.com, but like you said, you expect that they might secure that, but in this case, they have not. So
yeah, like it must be a special exception then for a certificate installed on your phone or root certificate installed on your phone.
yeah, and I think most of what gets baked into the browser is the root certs, and this is back before the operating systems got a little better about their frameworks.
Mhm.
So like if you installed, Chrome or Firefox on Linux,
Mhm.
who knows where, it's like certificate authorities and stuff were getting installed or trusted. So it just had to bake them into the browser. So it put
Yeah.
Let's Encrypt, Komodo, I'm trying to remember who all the people were that would sell you. Not Let's Encrypt is free, but it used to be SSL certs were like $500
Yeah.
and up, for a year.
Yeah.
And now I think the price has gotten depressed a little bit by Let's Encrypt, but you had to bake it into the binary just for it to be able to verify at the browser level. But now I think if like Chrome doesn't recognize it, they'll actually ask the operating system if it's a trusted root authority. And I think part of the reason is because otherwise it's such a pain in the ass to do corporate websites when you need to self-sign your own like internal,
Mhm.
like I know at BMW we use a lot of like fake like non-routable domains that might say it's like intranet.bmw.net or
Or
something.
got local or something.
Yeah, or .local, but we still want to be TLS because we still want to have encrypted traffic even on the intranet.
Right.
But getting all the non-techie browsers to trust that certificate would be really difficult if you couldn't install the root cert or the certificate authority into the operating system
Mhm.
through like I guess the remote administration.
So what you're
tool.
saying is it's an intentional architectural design.
Yeah, I think
Was
it's
that,
an
was that your
intentional
question?
Hmm.
Was that your question?
Well, I was curious if it, like I said, I know there is where you can bind a who issues your certificate into the browser. And so if someone else issued a certificate for you, it's not going to trust it, but it might make an exception if, normally there's like a chain of, a trust chain of,
Right.
there's
It
the
asks
root that's
that
installed in
person.
your browser, but then like they sign theirs and they sign theirs.
You can ask VeriSign or you can ask whoever.
Yeah, and so probably if it goes through that trust chain, it probably wouldn't allow it, but probably since that's actually a root one in your device, it must allow it. I was just curious.
I can see if I go like Firefox, I think, maybe Safari, they have a developer there. I will see if it'll let me inspect the certificate and, it shouldn't be as legitimate as if you were looking at, regular Google. Let's see here.
Edge does anything.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Isn't that just Chromium anyway?
It is, and now it is, yeah.
Well, it's just always been Chrome. You was Internet Explorer that was.
No, on mobile, it's really hard to inspect the TLS certificate like you can on a browser. Like on a browser, you should be able to click, right here and inspect all the things about the certificate. And on a phone, I would need to stick someone else's laptop through this proxy to have them inspect the certificate to see what it's saying. But yeah.
Are there any questions from everyone else that's joined? Ben, any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Jace.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Really appreciate this. This was really interesting. Thank you. Okay, well, anyone have any discussion points? Want to talk about something or? Thanks for coming tonight for the first time. And was there anything you had particularly you wanted to talk about while you were here?
Did you guys talk about SPF and DChem and DMARC last month?
I think that was mentioned. I think I recall.
It was on a thread and someone had put it in there. but-
It's maybe.
SPF and Deacon was me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That was the,
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you have a question about it or?
Just if you knew a good resource for, reading up on it. I mean, I know how to do it. I have a basic understanding of it, but
Yeah,
if you have more advanced stuff, that'd be great.
there's actually a local guy here. His name is Barry something. I can't remember. He's on Hack Greenville, and he wrote some articles recently from his experience of dealing with some of those technologies, and it even got mentioned by what's that blog that's real popular in the security community?
Ars Technica.
No, it's a particular guy who does a lot of investigative journalism kind of stuff. But anyway,
CNET,
Not Ferromic.
Troy.
I'll have to.
GX.
But anyway, I'll look it up and post it to the list or whatever. But yeah, he wrote a bunch of articles recently on that.
TechNet.
Jam, did you want to respond?
Look at a type. Sorry. Well, SPF is a DNS thing. There's I think MX Toolbox is the one I use to make the SPF records. DChem is definitely similar. It uses DNS. I don't remember if I found a web browser or browser-based tool to generate the keys, or if it was something else.
I've used MX Toolbox for that one too.
I had one question for the group that I don't know if anybody knows. We got more IT folks than
Yeah.
we have in a regular room.
Suck it to us.
If you're doing, I guess, Wi-Fi point to point, and it's not just in a building, like say you're shooting across the street here, is there any sort of licensing or things that prevent you from causing interference to outside people? Because Cisco, whoever made the hardware already, the FCC compliance testing.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the allocated bandwidth of that.
Yeah.
I mean, they do have equipment that does require licensing if you have that level, if you need that level, but yeah, you can buy off the shelf stuff that doesn't require any kind of licensing.
I've been getting annoyed lately as Verizon and AT&T are popping up all the small cells here in town. It is wreaking havoc on if you try to have a Wi-Fi connection in the car to play your audio. I think both Android and Apple have CarPlay or Android play, but basically it creates a little mini Wi-Fi network to stream the data because you can get a lot more across it than Bluetooth. But I keep getting knocked off at random intersections here, and it's just surprising that they're pushing that much power.
Yeah, I've noticed that, because one of my cars has wireless AirPlay.
Is it
Yeah.
the same frequency band?
You know what, it probably.
Well, 5G and LTE, I don't think they use it that often, but it can
Yeah,
use the unlicensed 2.4 gigahertz spectrum.
Really?
And 5G, it's also, there's like 50 options, there's a ton of bands that they can use that's in there. But I suspect it's probably not the small cell pushing on that. I think they just have point to point, access, there's like their backhaul, I would assume is like not, the cone is very wide.
yeah.
And they need enough to be able to push, pole to pole. And they're just blasting the street, which is sort of annoying. But I don't know if there's anything you can do about it because it's sort of like an easement. It's like if they want to put a gas line through your front yard.
Yeah.
They apply the
I
same.
didn't think about that, but yeah, you're right. I've had a lot of problems with that.
And because
But other
the
cars
other
are
in
plugging in,
Greenville
no
has
problems, but
has
this
been
wireless one, yeah.
going way up. It's like exponential. It's every week you see a new one of those poles with the metal grate on the top. And it's really hard to tell like who makes the panels because the metal mesh makes it you can't quite see if it's who manufactures that gear, but I don't know.
My wife uses the wireless Apple, but I haven't really noticed her having
Yeah,
issues.
we used to have one. One of the antennas that's still in the corner of that building. We used to have one over this building.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're point to point.
Was they a client or they?
Yeah, the people there when they had COVID and stuff, I don't know, was it COVID? I can't remember. Anyway, they outgrew the space over there,
Oh.
and their overflow was here until one of their tenants lease ran out, and they moved everything back over. So an engineering firm over there, can't remember what the name of it is. Fletcher Group, yeah, or whatever it is now.
My guess is like the problem is that because it's a backhaul and they're pulling a whole bunch of small cells together, they're probably saturating all the channels of Wi-Fi versus like when you're just doing a little point to point, maybe you use 2 or 3 Wi-Fi channels,
Yeah,
but you're not like taking that whole, it's like 5.1 to like 5.8 gigahertz band and saturating it with traffic because, and you need to do with a lot of power too.
You're just, and it's
Because of like R squared rules, the amount of power you need to knock off devices this far apart is like, that's a decent
And
amount of
that's
power.
highly directional versus omni, you're trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if there's no gotcha or I can say, like, stop Verizon.
Well, they're probably licensed, yeah, I'm sure they have the license for whatever frequency that is. I wonder if it's going to be maybe close enough, but it's.
Just surround your car with a Faraday cage.
Right?
Yeah.
Put my tinfoil hat on.
Isn't it kind of a fair thing? Very loose, except for the glass part.
Car,
It's not very tight, but you can't get hit by lightning, so.
Yeah. All right, anyone else have anything else? Anyone online have anything?
I did look up that thing. If you look up brightball.com, it's a guy local here wrote a bunch of articles on email stuff. So
Does he go by that on his article?
I just
I
posted
think
it.
he's Hat Greenville.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about.
yeah, Barry's his first name. I don't know what his
Yeah,
last name
Barry.
is, but anyway.
Yeah.
Ball.
Yeah, Bright Ball. I think it's a consulting company he used to have, and he just still has the domain and puts all the stuff on there. But
He's actually talked to her a couple times.
yeah,
Brightball.com tag DMark was just commented by Joel.
but yeah, he has some experience in it, and so if you're looking for stuff,
Oh, let me share that.
It looks like someone mentioned DMARC, and I've heard recently about ARC. DKIM is public key, private key. You keep the private key on your server, and you need to configure your outbound MTA to sign every message with the DKIM keys. The public key goes in DNS, the private key goes on your server. I'm not sure how much that helps. Sorry for interrupting.
He's nodding.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff on his website.
He posts stuff a lot on Postgres too and some other things, but I know he recently wrote a bunch of articles on that topic. So
Yeah, Barry's a good guy.
Brian Krebs, that was the guy
Yeah, Krebs on
that
security.
quoted him.
Correct.
Oh, Krebs, yeah. Ben, it's been a while since Columbia's had a speaker. Do y'all have anything lined up for a future month, or should I try to get someone for next month?
I don't have anything for next month, but I'll get somebody.
Okay. Well, if no one has anything else, then I do I have a motion to adjourn? Thanks everybody for coming. We'll see you next month on the second Tuesday of the month instead of the third Monday when it's not Valentine's Day. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
Jace.
you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bye.